Here I can say that my experience to play with the historical pianos gives me a lot of information about tempo in Chopin etudes, in scherzo, everywhere. Because when you play the historical instrument which Chopin used, it was impossible to play in these tempos.
Once you raise those questions, the answer goes only in one direction. I mean, this will be a major shock, but you see the metronome ticking there. It's exactly the tempo that Chopin indicated. There's no discussion. You can say, like, but you didn't want that. That's the frequency per minute. Or this one. I know when we would talk to the pianist or Ben Lode, and by the way, I think we should talk. Ben, you and I need to talk. Why not publicly? There's nothing to lose here. But there is only one direction when you want to solve the issues. The issues that we're talking about are way bigger than people realize. And then you arrive at this. So Ben is interviewing here Dina Joffe. She is one of the judges of the Chopin competition, and she's going to talk about some really interesting topics that obviously we're going to listen to and we're going to dive into. Young people play too fast. The first argument she makes will be a shocker to many. I really can promise you that. Historical pianos, the forte piano, those are the instruments where all the very fast tempi are possible. Well, apparently for people that are really in that world, that really are professional, that really know these instruments, apparently that's not the case. Here we go.
If we speak about tempo, here I can say that my experience to play with the historical pianos gives me a lot of information about tempo in Chopin etudes, in scherzo, everywhere. Because when you play the historical instrument which Chopin used, it was impossible to play in these tempos. Because the key didn't answer so fast in Erard and also in Pleyel. So it's not Olympic Games Chopin competition. You cannot play so fast. So many pianists now play faster and faster. I don't know when it will stop.
Well, I don't know either when it will stop. But the interesting point, there are two interesting points here. First off, historical pianos, she mentions also Erard. Erard had double escapement, but the double escapement from Erard is nowhere near close to what a modern grand offers to pianists today in terms of speed. Also, a modern grand, the piano that these pianists are using in the Chopin competition, it's in terms of weight, not so much different from the 19th century piano. Yes, it's heavier, but these are so well regulated with the double escapement that indeed creates a possibility for pianists to go faster and faster. And it's so great to have finally a pianist acknowledging that. Well, recently we had a video, the Italian pianist Roberto Proceda, who also says that, like, don't think even to take these tempo. It was a Beethoven sonata he was talking about on a fortepiano, because the fortepiano won't respond. The action is a single escape action, and if you go to the very early ones, the Viennese pianos and the Chopin piano, the Pleyel piano was not so much different. Chopin also wrote part of his etudes for Viennese pianos. Let's not forget that. The Opus 10 number 1 was written when he was in Vienna. So these pianos are very difficult to play, yet they play lighter. And the first impression you might have is like, that's the answer to all the speeds problems we have from the metronome. No, it's not. They make it worse. And the second thing is that from her experience, she comments on the historical pianos that actually will not be responsive to the tempi that the young pianists in that competition are taking. But it's a wrong direction. It's a wrong perspective. The historical pianos give a clear answer to the single beat interpretation of the Chopin metronomization. That's what the historical instruments are doing. What Dina Joffe here is saying, like, my tempi, which are slower, and by the way, I don't know if that's really true, because I've heard some pieces played by her. She can play incredibly fast. That in my case, when I reduce the tempi in the scherzo here and there, like that, I listen to these historical pianos, and so you have to take a little bit of a slower tempo. But that's not the right approach. Well, you can do that, but if you want to stay truthful to the score, and she's going to make the case like that, guys, it's important. I will finish the sentence in a second. But when you do that, the historical pianists do not give an answer to your tempi, they give an answer to the metronome arcs. And the metronome arcs go way more, in single beat at least, into the direction of these young people that are in the competition. And I could say easily, safely now, that many of the etudes and many of the Chopin pieces that you will hear in January in Miami are played according to a single beat, so the modern reading of the metronome, too slow. Of course, our solution, you all know that, but in case you're new, metronome was used in those days as a pendulum, as physicists still use a pendulum today. They do not count 1, 2, 3, 4. They count 1, 3, 4, and then then you get these etudes of these results also from the Beethoven symphonies as we are playing them. They're much slower. So her point is valid, but only up to a degree, not from her personal perspective. But let's continue. The next point is equally important and equally interesting. There we go.
Probably never. When you speak about Beethoven sonata, especially in Germany, of course, it's so important, the topic articulation, yeah? Everybody is very precise and very strict about this. When it's coming to Chopin, many young people don't care at all. What is articulation? How Chopin wrote the scores. For example, number 4, yeah? In first 4 bars, it's absolutely 4 different things written by Chopin. The same in 25, number 5. He always changed something. Yeah, in Opus 10, number 10, Chopin always is doing different kind of abogic, which people are losing because they are thinking only how to play it faster and faster, without to go deeper in the score.
This is an important statement as well. Also there I can add a few things. Like she makes a case like in Beethoven's world, when people play Beethoven, people are freaking out about articulation. No, they're not. They're absolutely not. The tempos that people take since like a century make it impossible to play what Beethoven marked. And if people reach that, or if people reach those tempi, I would say, the necessary tool in order to allow pianists also, Dina Joffe, to play the tempi that they take is the pedal. They put the pedal under everything. And so guess what disappears? Of course, you interpret the articulation. If you listen to Chopin's revolutionary etude by Alberto, here, no pedal. And so my question would be like, can we have a discussion about that? I would really take part in the conversation about that, because the first thing that people would say like, yeah, but don't be dogmatic. It's not because Chopin doesn't indicate pedal that you're not allowed to take pedal. First off, that's true. You do whatever you want with music. But if we are talking about being truthful to the idea of the composer, and this conversation is about that. I still have to finish that sentence now, I remember. Then yes, the pedal is in the score. Chopin marks the pedal when he wants it, and he doesn't mark it when he doesn't want it. And guess why he doesn't want it so often? Because of the articulation, because of also the intensity of sound, the clearness, the transparency. That's all there in the score. Yes, of course, that's important. And when people talk to us, like, yeah, but not playing the pedal there. I mean, come on, how can you? It's obvious. Yeah, it's all obvious, right? It's all obvious that Chopin marked the pedal in like dozens of places, and where he doesn't indicate it, he also wanted to have pedal. No, it's not obvious. Why is it dogmatic to stick to the score only when you apply the things that are in the score? Just saying. Okay, let's move on, because now she comes to another interesting point. Oh, the thing I really wanted to say is like what Dina Joffe apparently is not realizing is that she's commenting on a young generation as playing too fast. Yeah, but that's a trend. That's a trend that started in 1820. The book that we're going to publish, Fixing the Beethoven Mistake, will have an entire chapter, and it will be a long chapter about like the problems are getting worse. Like the problem being the metronomic values, the speeds, the resulting speeds from the metronomic values already on its own are problematic. No discussion, no debate. They make no sense. Even if people can play 30% maybe, and I'm guessing this, like pieces on the highest virtuosic level of today, not 150, 200 years ago, and certainly not by Chopin, who didn't have a great health, by the way. So even today, 30%, like how many percentage of metronome marks can we play in single beat? 30, 40%, but that doesn't prove anything. It's not by picking a recording here and a piece there that you say like, yeah, but we can do this and we can do that. No, you have to regard this as a whole. And if you see then, just play the Opus 299 by Czerny. Even, Ben, if you're listening, try that and send an email to me with your impression. I'll keep it secret. I keep it hidden. Unless we decide to go public with this discussion. That would be a great podcast, I can promise you that. It would be a nice conversation too. But just sit at your piano and try, and then realize that Czerny wrote hundreds of these etudes that are impossible. The Opus 299 being designed for beginners. How do I know that? Because you have piano treatises in the 19th century published with a literature list where the first 20 etudes by the 299 are marked for beginners. That's the reason how you know that. I'm not inventing that. It's not my opinion. It's just something that you can read, and it's not difficult even to find that. You just Google it and you find so many treatises that just happen to serve Opus 299 by Czerny because it's one of the most ridiculously well-written bundles of etudes for beginners. So, but if you cannot play that today, 14.4 notes per second, yeah, what are we talking about? But Dina Joffe's position is, and she doesn't realize that, which I cannot blame her for, she's part of that trend. She's part of that trend that started in the 19th century, in the 1820s and the 1830s, where there are so many records of people saying, guys, what are you doing? That is not how Beethoven intended his compositions to be played. And if you want to show off your virtuosity, then do it with other music, but not with Beethoven sonatas. But it was unstoppable. So she is commenting on the next generation as like in 1840 people were commenting on the current generation back then. But she's part of that. And then my question would be, what is the problem? Because we need to speed up even more. Even the next generation, the people are participating now in the Chopin competitions, they do not play fast enough according to single beat. So what are you saying to them? Be truthful to the score, but the metronome marks are in the score. They have been played. Apparently even by list sight reading. And so where do we go with this? If we take the problem seriously, if we take these great points seriously, where do we go with this? Then the only direction is this direction. And there will be a shock, especially with music that we are so conditioned for. We know the Chopin etudes like in and out. We hear them. She's going to make a point that actually will underline this. We hear them hundreds of times. And then this young, stupid Italian guy comes and plays it like this. I get it. That's hard. That's difficult. But I can promise you, this makes way more sense, even if you're shocked, than you might think right now. It's so simple. We have a problem. We have the metronome marks do not make any sense as a whole. And so what's the solution? Going faster, wait another 100 years, pushing people further and further and further and further, or saying like, guys, now it's enough. Let's look in the score really what's written. We cannot play the articulations. We cannot play this. We cannot play that. We cannot play the speeds. So yeah, guess what? They were accurate with that. Chopin didn't just take his metronome and say like, let's give whatever. Who cares about metronome marks? Just give something and everybody will be confused and I will be happy because I did exactly like Beethoven, who also metronomized the symphonies in a way we cannot play. No, nothing about that in the 19th century. The only records you find, the only quotes you find are about the metronome marks, they are accurate tempo indications. And on top of that these composers wanted you, that's also you by the way, to play their music in that tempo. Why? Because tempo is a foundation on everything. You change your tempo and you change everything.
And you know, one funny story I would like to say, because I don't know, Opus 25 number 11 probably was played 60 or 65 times. And what was sometimes absolutely amazing that many people from different continents in some particular bar, they did the same absolutely rubato with the same, not written by Chopin, some agogic, which absolutely not natural was. I was saying the sitting on the balcony, it was possible. The first, they took some master course with the same professor, probably. Or I call them YouTubisti. So probably they hear the same YouTube, which some famous artists who have such idea, but they don't care, they just copy this artist. And exactly this number 2511, they forget about the music.
65 people played that Chopin Opus 25 number 11, I think, that she mentions in exactly the same way with a rubato in the same bar. And she blames YouTube for that. That's a very strange statement, because on YouTube, it are the same artists, it are the same Barenboims, it are the same Andras Schiffs, it are the same Paulinis. It is exactly, are the same artists that play on YouTube. What she is missing, a new generation is doing some different stuff compared to hers, but what she was doing was also just copy-paste, not based on the score. I can guarantee when you listen to her Nocturnus, I didn't, but that the rubatos come there in the ornamented passages, the bel canto ornaments. Chopin really was clear about that he didn't want to have that, and it will be there. And it will be there in exactly the way as Paulini played, or in the tradition of her generation. That's the point. We don't go back to the score. Yes, when you talk about that here, like in this video, you go and you make your point. And you say, listen, see what's in the score. And you take the score and you discuss about the score, but that's an abstract discussion. You need to be at the piano. And then, again, the importance of tempo comes on the table. Because it is the tempo that makes it so difficult. It is the tempo that forces these pianists to make these handbrake rubatos. It's freestyle nocturnus. Because the tempo doesn't allow to play what Chopin intended. And guess what? Chopin made a composition based on what he thought was a correct tempo. He heard a tempo. He didn't hear some abstract notes floating in the air that he just brought together on paper, and then you say like, oh, yeah, whatever, and now we find a tempo. No, he had a performance in his mind. That's, of course, so obvious, but think about that. And from there, he wrote that. But he wrote his music. And if you reconstruct that timeline, and therefore you need, I'm sorry, I'm hitting the Beethoven symphonies, but I mean that you need this theory, you need that concept, because that allows you to reconstruct that timeline. And on that timeline, you then have the freedom as an interpreter, as a performer, to interpret or to play the music. But that's your foundation. And guess what? Then it starts to make sense. I want to bring another point that she makes, which is really cool and ties directly into this, namely about what is interpretation. And I think she makes a great point there. We should only take it at face value because it has major implications.
Number 4 or number 8, when I was first practicing these etudes, I put a lot of time on the left hand, actually, on the rhythmical part. Without to make all this rubato, without to speak, to think about what the young people call interpretation. It's not about interpretation. It's just to do the text as it's written by composer.
It's just to do the text as it's written by the composer. In other words, you look at the score and you play what's in the score. And she makes a remark towards young people, what they call interpretation. Of course, that's a little bit misleading in the sense that as if what her generation did was not an interpretation. You always have to interpret. I get her point. You just first do what's in the score. Someone who's absolutely a genius in that is Alberto. He is so strict with the music. But what he does with this limited frame that he allows himself to do is unbelievably effective. Accentuation, articulation, phrasing, it's all there. And guess what? The music works so strong then. It's like the pianist is disappearing in the background. but it's just doing his job. And then the voice of Beethoven or Chopin is like pushed to the foreground. And that's partly what she meant. But then let's talk about that, because there is a major implication. If we look at the score, the steadiness of the left hand that she was referring to, you cannot keep that. Even you, I mean, speaking now to Dina Joffe, you cannot keep your left hand stable when you play a Chopin nocturne, when you play a Chopin concerto, whenever you have something that's really difficult in La Tristesse, in the Opus 10 number 3 in the middle section. There also you applied like exaggerate rubatos because it was difficult, and just listen to the fragment. Or you just have to go back to the tempo primo, which many play in whole beat, by the way, still. La Tristesse played in whole beat, played in this way, played in our way. What's then about the score? But then when you want to make from a very fast middle section with a lot of like rhythmical instability, go back to the tempo primo, then you have to pull the handbrake because you go from space shuttle tempo to postcoach tempo. Are we willing? Are you willing? Are we willing as a society? A judge from the Chopin competition has the idea you have to be truthful to the score, but none of the judges ever has been truthful to the score, and I'm not criticizing them. I'm not blaming them. I'm not saying like, what a bunch of idiots. No, I understand why that wasn't the case, because you need the tempo reconstruction. You need that. There is no other way. We will be seeing conflicts with the score till eternity if you just compress a timeline and you're not a computer. Well, then you have to severely compromise the musical text. You have rubato here, you have whatever. And then we call that interpretation. No, she's very right in saying that's not interpretation, that's just doing your own stuff. But the reason why people do their own stuff, not as indicated by Chopin, is because out of a necessity. All of these young people, her, Ben Lode, everybody, there's great musicians, but nobody can compress music. It's not double tempo, it's like much faster. We single beat, forget about that. And some Chopin etudes, yes, we can, but not all of them. Even Chopin. And Chopin, I repeated that, I mentioned that time and time again, and I know it's annoying so many people. Chopin is not challenging in the light of virtuosity of the 19th century. I mean, compare that to Henri Hertz, to Kalkbrenner even his teacher, to Liszt, to Alcan, to Saint-Saëns. You have names in the 19th century that we don't know, Theodor Döhler, that we don't know anything about anymore. But just look those etudes. If Chopin is already a problem, then we have really something to solve. Because what would happen if someone would play Theodor Döhler as exercise or etudes on a competition, and we would look at the metronome marks then? That would be another story. But final point of this video. What is great that some people actually go on these podcasts and just say, hey, like for instance, my music genesis, I made a video about a video that he made. Go and check it out. Published a few weeks ago. So he writes, a couple of weeks ago, you told me you didn't have a dog in the fight over whole beat metronome practice, but this video is so much about WBMP. It's true. Surprised you didn't mention it. Then Ben answers this, and I'm happy with that. Still no horse in the race, no dog in the fight. Curious about WBMP, but it's not something I know enough about to allude in this interview with Dina Joffe. I also don't believe that her general claim that pianists play faster than today than in Chopin's time is necessarily evidence or even related to the WBMP thesis. Yes, it is 100% related, and I made that case, I think, here, hopefully clear enough. It's 100% related to that. I just wanted to say, Ben, you're curious about the WBMP, but it's not something I know enough about. Well, let's change that. Drop me an email. I dropped you an email a few weeks ago. You might have not seen that, but let's talk. I mean, what a world would we live in if a conversation, and even a public one, why not, would not be able to take place? This channel, our research, is just to reconstruct the metronome marks, and from there you start. But the ones that would really benefit from making the case to go slower instead of always faster are the students. generations of students will be pushed and already are pushed towards speeds that are just destructive for their health. Talented young people will end conservatory with a chronic injury. We talked about that recently, and I will talk about it much more, trust me. That's why we have to step forward and say, not in the name of the composer. You want to destroy your body by practicing 50,000 hours a day in order to achieve something that's still too slow according to modern practice? Well, be my guest. But I, as a teacher, am not going to participate in that. I'm not going to push you because we know that the composer has something else in mind, and therefore we need to talk. Because it's all nonsense, then prove us wrong. But that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. This is not designed to play 15 notes per second for a page long. I'll reach my hand out to Ben Lode. No expectations and no hard feelings when it doesn't happen. Let's have some peace in this world, right? Guys, thank you for being here. Go have a look also at our new notation course. It's something really fascinating. I know it's expensive. You can just buy it. If you don't like it in the first 7 days, we just refund you. No questions asked. And also go have a look at our Patreon page. We have a wonderful community. Podcasts are there, concerts, practicing sessions. You can have direct questions to me. We have hangouts every 2 months. So we meet each other there. It's so cool. And also it's our patrons that allow me to record all these videos and do somewhat more for you. So thank you for checking it out. That's all I've got for you today. Thank you for watching. We see each other very soon, hopefully again. Bye.